We don't suffer because others hurt us. We suffer because we stayed too long with someone who hurt us from the very beginning. Carl Jung. There is a kind of pain that doesn't come from the breakup, but from the moment you realize the person you loved, sacrificed for, trusted, was never who you thought they were. They were there, but not to love you, to drain you. And the cruelest part? When you hurt, they're calm. When you collapse, they smile. When you forgive, they see weakness. You thought love could change them. You thought if you were kind enough, patient enough, forgiving enough, they would learn to cherish you. But what you didn't know is this: a narcissist doesn't love, they possess. And every emotion you gave became a brick they used to build a throne for their hollow ego. But then one day, you went silent. You no longer needed their understanding. You no longer hoped they'd return. You pulled back your energy. You pulled back your trust. You pulled back yourself. And that was when everything started to collapse for them. This video is not a warning for you. It's a reckoning for them. Because when the narcissist finally feels what you felt, it's already too late. A narcissist doesn't live on love the way we understand it. They live on your reactions. They don't need you to be happy, they need you to respond. They want you to be angry, to cry, to feel guilty, to be confused, to worry, as long as you are still emotionally engaged, still chasing clarity in the fog they intentionally create. To them, your emotions are not something to empathize with, they are fuel. When you laugh, they feel important. When you cry, they feel powerful. When you forgive, they think they've won. Your pain is their proof of control. And the more you hurt because of them, the more real and relevant they feel. That's the cruelest game of emotional manipulation. The danger is, they often target empaths, those who lead with their hearts, who forgive, who try to see the good in people. Empaths don't walk away at the first sign of pain, they stay. They try to understand, to heal, to love harder in hopes that the other person will change. But they don't realize this one truth. The narcissist doesn't want to be healed. They want to be in control. They don't want connection, they want power. And you, whether you meant to or not, became their emotional supplier. Someone who carries the weight of emotions they don't have the courage to face. You react, you endure, you try, and they observe, calculate, and use every bit of your emotion like chess pieces in their game. They know when to appear vulnerable so you feel pity. They know when to go silent so you feel guilty. They know when to say, "I'm sorry," not out of regret, but because it's the perfect time to pull you back into their grip. The narcissist doesn't love you, they love what you reflect back to them. They don't need you for who you are, they need you as an emotional mirror, so they can feel enough in the hollow shell of their ego. And slowly, over time, you forget who you are. You begin to doubt yourself, to believe you're too sensitive, to shrink your voice, to dull your needs, just to keep the peace. But the more you disappear within yourself, the more powerful they feel. Until one day, something shifts. Not with rage, not with chaos, not even with tears, just silence. A deep, unwavering silence. You no longer need them to understand. You no longer wait for an apology. You no longer crave their return. You need only yourself. And in that moment, the moment you withdraw your energy, your forgiveness, your emotional presence, is the exact moment their entire false identity begins to collapse. There are no more sorrowful eyes for them to feel significant, no more second chances for them to feel forgiven, no more constant reactions for them to control. They panic. They reach for every old tactic, guilt, charm, rage, nostalgia. But nothing works anymore, because you are no longer the same. And here lies the ultimate irony. They finally begin to feel what you once felt: the abandonment, the invisibility, the helplessness, the fear of being forgotten. But the difference is you used that pain to grow, to understand, to rise. They use that pain to spiral, to unravel, to self-destruct. They have no resilience, no inner compass, no tools to face themselves. Because their entire life was built on avoiding exactly this confrontation. And now, for the first time, there's no one left to blame, to manipulate, to use as a shield. For the first time, they are forced to look in the mirror, and what they see is not the magnificent version of themselves they projected, but a cold, empty void that cannot be filled. And by the time they realize that, you're already gone. No longer waiting, no longer hoping, no longer tethered by guilt or pity. And that, to them, is the nightmare no apology can ever undo. They thought they would never have to pay the price, that the silence, the hurt, and the doubt they sowed would never return. Because in the narcissist's world, time stands still, consequences don't exist, and other people's emotions are merely props on a stage they believe they control. They think every wound you endured is temporary, that you'll always come back, always forgive, always find a reason to stay. They see your endurance as a default, your sacrifice as a duty. They live under the illusion that you need them when in truth, it is they who depend on you. They depend on your empathy, your patience, your kindness. They need you to feel valuable, yet they will never admit it. And when you begin to awaken, when you stop, when you no longer react, that's when every mask begins to fall. A narcissist lacks the capacity to face the truth because their entire identity is built on denying it. They deny wrongdoing, deny the pain they caused, and even deny the emptiness within themselves. They construct a golden cage with lies that they are innocent, that they are strong, that they are always in control. But that cage doesn't protect them from collapse, it only delays the inevitable. And truth never disappears. It waits, it simmers, it grows stronger in your absence. Then one day, it strikes like a flood, tearing down the defenses they've fastened to their fragile ego. They begin to feel what they never thought they would: abandonment, irrelevance, and a loss of control. But more painful than anything is the realization that the person who once gave them everything no longer exists in the same place. You have changed, and that change is irreversible. When a narcissist is no longer fed by another person's emotions, it's as if their lifeline has been cut. They panic, desperately searching for replacements, new relationships, easier targets to manipulate, new stages on which to play the victim or the savior. But no one can fill the void you left behind, because you were not just a partner, a friend, or a loved one. You were their entire emotional regulation system. You were the shelter for a decaying ego masked in arrogance. Losing you meant more than losing a person. They lost the last reflection that helped them believe they existed. And that, to them, is not just pain. It is the end. They might try to come back. They'll say the things you once longed to hear. They'll make promises, show remorse, and re-perform the same script with new lines. But you are no longer their audience. You no longer need their narrative to feel worthy. You've rewritten your life in truth, raw, unembellished, independent of anyone's permission. And that is something a narcissist can never do. They can't rewrite themselves because they've never dared to face who they truly are. You did what they never could, stepped out of the manipulation loop, faced the pain, and turned it into power. When they finally begin to feel what you once felt, it is also the moment they're forced to confront the psychological part of themselves they've avoided all their lives, not because they want to change, but because there's no other way out. But that awakening doesn't save them, it only exposes them. Because the truth is this: not everyone deserves a second chance, especially when the first chance they used it to destroy someone who once loved them with everything they had. But one day, When the person who was once manipulated finally awakens and lets go completely, no more anger, no more hope, no more reaction, the collapse begins. The narcissist's mask shatters. They no longer have anyone to reflect their existence back to them. Isolation, meaninglessness, and panic flood in, but not to awaken them, rather to launch them into an identity crisis. When there is no one left to manipulate, no more eyes to mirror the illusion they've crafted, the void inside them becomes undeniable. It is the moment of complete psychological collapse. With nothing left to cling to, they drift in the very chaos they once forced others to carry. Without you to soothe, to listen, to regulate emotions on their behalf, they are face to face with their raw, chaotic ego. But unlike you, they lack the foundation of self-awareness. They've never learned how to self-heal. They've never truly listened to their own emotions, having always avoided them by controlling the emotions of others. Therefore, their crisis does not lead to growth, it leads to fragmentation. Their identity dissolves, and they become disoriented. Some fall into depression, others become more aggressive and dangerous, and some attempt to reconstruct themselves through new relationships. But all share one common thread. They no longer possess the control they once had. Meanwhile, you, the one whose self-image was once distorted, have now recovered. From the wreckage, you rebuild yourself with truth, intrinsic value, and a love that no longer depends on external validation. Every step you take toward the light leaves them further behind in the darkness they created. And the most painful truth for them is, they cannot follow. Not because you forbid them, but because they lack the ability to walk through the door you so bravely opened, the door of awareness, of accountability, and of real love. You moved forward, they did not. And that difference is something no manipulation can ever reverse. The wounded person, on the other hand, chooses a different path. They use pain to grow. They don't deny it, don't run from it, and don't try to place the blame on someone else. Instead, they face it. They learn to name their emotions, to understand the roots of their wounds, and step by step, they heal. Every moment of pain becomes an opportunity for rebirth. They rebuild themselves from the shattered pieces, not as the distorted version once molded by manipulation, but as a new being, stronger, clearer, and no longer easily broken. They learn to love themselves, not in a narcissistic way, but with a full-hearted acceptance, embracing both their strength and vulnerability. They no longer need someone else to affirm their worth. No more dependence on praise, no more fear of judgment. They know they deserve to be loved, respected, and happy, not because someone says so, but because they've seen that truth in their own journey through darkness. And then they leave that relationship. Not out of resentment or the desire for revenge. They walk away in silence, but carrying the deepest victory, inner power. A power that is quiet, without the need to boast. It lies in their steady gaze, in a voice that no longer trembles, in the way they draw clear boundaries and refuse to accept anything less than what they truly deserve. That is true victory. Not the victory over another person, but the triumph over oneself. While the narcissist remains caught in the chaos they created, the once wounded person emerges as someone new, free, sovereign, and awakened. And that is something no manipulation can ever take back. The narcissist's belated awakening is not a sincere apology. It's a regret over losing control. Not because they genuinely feel remorse for what they did, but because they can no longer manipulate your emotions and actions. If they come back, and they often do, it's not out of love, but out of emptiness. They cannot bear not being the center of your world anymore. They miss the obedience, the attention, the unconditional forgiveness, not you. And when they realize that you've changed, that you no longer occupy the same position they used to control, their greatest fear surfaces: loss of power. They may use every trick to regain that position: apologies, tears, sudden sweetness, or even playing the role of someone who has awakened. But all of it serves one purpose: to reclaim the central role, to restore a balance tilted in their favor. Their apologies come without action. Their regret lacks responsibility. Their affection lacks depth. It's not awakening, it's a survival strategy. Because for the narcissist, true awakening requires them to face the emptiness within, and that is what they fear most. They lack the tools to heal themselves, the courage to take responsibility, and above all, the intention to change if it doesn't serve their ego. Therefore, what they call awakening is merely a reaction to loss, not a transformation of the soul. Meanwhile, you don't need their awakening to find peace. You don't need an apology to feel whole. You've walked the path of genuine healing, where you are the center, where you've learned to love yourself without needing validation from anyone else. And that's what sets you apart. A difference the narcissist will never understand because they've never truly faced themselves. That is freedom. Not freedom from them, but freedom from the cycle they once trapped you in. A quiet, unwavering kind of freedom. A victory that needs no acknowledgement because your very existence, grounded and whole, is the loudest proof of all. In the end, it wasn't the narcissist who changed, it was you. It wasn't them who awakened, it was you who woke up from the illusion they so carefully constructed. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need anyone to validate your victory, because the most precious thing you've reclaimed is yourself. The freedom you now hold wasn't born from revenge. It was born from letting go. Not letting go out of bitterness, but from clarity, the understanding that you deserve a life that is whole, unmanipulated, and free from the constant questioning of your worth. You survived, you grew, and now you walk forward not as a victim, but as someone who has chosen inner freedom. This is a victory without fanfare, but it echoes in every step you take. Don't look back, don't regret, because where you're going is not a past that needs fixing. It's a future defined by awareness, self-respect, and real love.